Greetings, all you Metamaniacs. This is T Money G, and today I bring to you an exclusive interview with Capital Games around the new game mode Conquest. Now, we were quite critical when Galactic Challenges came out, saying that it's not really a game mode, it's more of an event that plays, every once in a while. I think people have had a lot of fun with it, but for me, it wasn't quite hitting the mark. Well, let me tell you that Galactic Conquest is different. It is a totally new game mode, and I think we're really going to enjoy it as a community. There are pieces within the game mode that really allow you to break the game in interesting ways, and it's going to be fabulous for those theory crafters among us, and very dynamic. No two people are going to have the same experience in there. So, yes, I'm very impressed with Conquest mode, and excited that it's coming very soon to our holotables. Let's hear from CG Doja Fett, CG SB Crumb, and CG Prototype, who is one of the developers of the Conquest mode, about all of the little ins and outs, the prizes, and all of the pieces that we have been speculating about confirmed. I was wondering if you could talk about where the game mode kind of fits into the game, just like what's the puzzle piece that it kind of fits into? What's the purpose of Conquest mode? It's pretty big mode. It's like, I don't know what proportion of time that we might spend on it, but it looks to be quite significant.
Yeah, there's a lot of angles, I guess, that you could tackle that question when we're talking about like the purpose and the goals. There are just so many of them. If we're talking about like myself, something that I'm really excited for is the opportunity for theory crafting and the skill expression that the opportunities for skill expression that lie therein. A lot of times as I'm reading the forums, especially when like a new character comes out or a new event comes out, there's always people who are so excited to share their strategies. And often as, we focus on faction locked synergies sometimes because there are, there's a balance to the game that we're trying to maintain. Balance often comes at the cost of theory crafting space. And I think Conquest is going to do a service to those who love to theory craft in that there are a lot of opportunities for designers to give players a chance to experiment, as well as for designers to experiment with what we allow, what kind of mechanics we allow on data disks, and the builds that we drive through those with the consumables, and also with the fact that each event can run, unlike the Sith Raid released, the encounters are what they are, and that's what you're going to be encountering every time you reactivate a raid. With Conquest, it's going to be different every time, and that means that we have the opportunity and the safe area to provide very exciting, sometimes very varying and very wildly varying experiences to the players. And I think that's what I'm excited about the most is how often are we going to be able to provide something that's brand new, that's fresh, where people are going to be able to go onto the forums and say, check out these data disks I got in this run. Look at these teams that are performing in a way that they weren't able to before, and just being able to feel smart and leverage the knowledge of the game that I know so many of our players have with all of the time that they've spent in it.
Thank you. I have also some questions about normal versus difficult. So could you speak about just the normal versus difficult mode? So what's the entry point for both? And is there a cap? Like, can you get into difficult if you're just a skilled player and you have the mind to kind of fight up there? Yeah, could you speak a little bit about the differences of both of those levels of difficulty?
Of course. So we have two levels of difficulty. There's normal and hard. Normal is going to be tuned around gear 12, scaling all the way up to relic 3. And hard mode will start at relic 4, scaling all the way up to relic 8. Out the gate, all players will have to complete normal before they're ready to move on to the hard difficulty. And there is a GP requirement to be able to enter hard mode. And part of that is just to be able to, because of the length of the event, of course, and the opportunity for rewards, we want to protect players who aren't quite ready to go into hard from going into there and getting stuck and having that moment where they realize, oh, I should have stayed in normal because I'm missing out on these rewards. So that's why there's that introductory piece of having to complete normal before you go into hard, especially for the very first conquest, when that's is likely to be one of the most difficult ones, because there's a lot of learning of new systems, kind of learning what your roster is capable of in the mode. There's a lot of things that you need to discover before players are ready to start making really like educated guesses on stretching their roster and how far they think they can go and how many resources like consumables do they need to rely on along the way.
And I'll just call out that while Conquest opens up at level 85, normal we're recommending 1 million GP account.
Great. And so it'll be an actual like cap on GP, not a cap on the squads themselves? Like on player GP?
For hard, there is a requirement that you have a 4 million GP to start playing that event.
Yeah. All right.
Normal doesn't have a GP requirement, but we suggest that you're at about 1 million.
So what happens when a player gets stuck? Like even if they've gone through normal or they're, and they think they could go into hard, but what if a player gets stuck kind of early on in Conquest?
Yeah, unfortunately, you are hard stuck at that point. There is no reset. You commit to normal or hard difficulty, and we'll probably expand the difficulties in both directions in the future. We'll probably add harder levels. We'll probably add some easier levels that may open up at less than player level 85. But you are committed for the duration of that event. There's a few different pieces of information that you can use to assess whether you're ready or not. When you come in, the sector list displays the boss battle that you will encounter. And if you tap on the little info button there, you can see the boss battle that ends or terminates each of the sectors. And there's also description in there of the kind of rough tuning that you will face in terms of the enemy squads across that sector. So we put that in there. Unfortunately, you can't go in and like look at every single node. We didn't want players to have to go in and tap on everything and like min max to that degree and do all of that assessment. So hopefully you can take a look at some of the recommendations. Again, everybody has to go through normal first, and so if you dunk on that, you might be ready to move forward. But there is, anyway.
I think the one important thing that's going to take time to settle into the system is knowing where that gradient is for how far you get in hard. When does that become more valuable to you than a full completion in normal, right? Mm-hmm. That's something we're being really intentional about, and trying to find where that line is and making sure that if you are able to get into hard and you're able to make some reasonable amount of progress, that you feel like it is worth it. You feel like you've earned that and you've graduated to hard, and you're going to still feel rewarded, even if you don't complete hard fully, that you're still more rewarded than going on the easier difficulty. So that's definitely something that we have in mind, and something that I think is an important part of the experience is when you get stuck, because maybe you're ready to go into hard, but you're not ready to beat the final boss of Sector 5. When you get stuck, we want the experience to be, wow, I got really far and I got some really good rewards, not, oops, I got stuck because I made a mistake and I think I could have gone a lot farther. I think there's a very different, there's a very big difference in that experience. And we're really shooting for I'm proud of myself for how far I got, not how far I didn't. And trying to put the focus on the rewards that were earned, not the rewards that you didn't earn from the previous difficulty. So there's a lot that goes into that. And I think that's just something we have to tune as the mode gets tested by a lot more players and mode gets played.
Yeah, I'll mention too that similar to Galactic Challenges, which we have changed a lot since its initial release, we're going to launch Conquest in an exhibition sort of season that's probably It'll be at least several different events, and we'll be closely monitoring player feedback. We'll be monitoring the data that we have access to see how players are performing. And it's likely that this mode will go through some changes across time.
Much like Galactic Challenges, though, you guys have the crate system, correct? Like, and it's almost a ticket system. You complete this feat, you get X amount of tickets. You complete this feat. In this situation, you're getting feats for the actual completion of the battles. And then there's also like running feats, and then like the boss nodes themselves have additional feats. Is it possible to get the final crate of goodies without doing absolutely everything, or is it going to require the max amount of tickets to get that very last box?
Some of that tuning, some of the, especially the rewards and the number of key cards that you have to acquire along the way, like that's definitely still in the tuning phase. But I would suspect that to get to that terminal box on the reward meter, that you're going to have to be able to 3-star most of the battles, rack up most of the feats along the way.
But you guys do have progressive rewards as well. Like I know on the way to the crates, you guys will give some of the currency, the in-game currency. There's merchants along the way. There's the Conquest shop itself. So there are things that we can get while playing along, correct?
Absolutely.
Like, yeah.
There's a progression similar to Galactic Challenges. There's a progression of crates that you can earn your way into. We also have immediate rewards that will grant, at the very least, Conquest currency that will allow you to purchase things from the shipments and from the merchants along the way. So yeah, I mean, depending on how well you're able to perform in the mode and get better over time and gain more mastery over it, you'll be able to progress further up that reward ladder.
Sorry, are you drinking beer?
It's an audio recording. Why are you gonna call me out?
Sorry. I was like, I'm not gonna be able to not laugh when I'm recording. We have a YouTube
Actually
channel.
a good
I'm
idea.
recording video.
It's just audio. Now everybody's gonna know I was drinking beer.
It's not just audio.
To your question originally though about like what happens when you get stuck, and I think there's like a couple ways to overcome those things as well. Like I think prototypes talk about kind of some of the release valves in the other conversation we had, where it's like, there are consumables that can help you get over those things, and so you can go back, maybe purchase some of those consumables from the previous merchants that you've got to. Also, I don't believe your roster is locked, right? So you have over 2 weeks to do this. So maybe you can't solve this problem right now at this any moment, but over the course of 2 weeks, as you power up your squads, like, oh, I've got good data discs for this team. Maybe this could help me solve this next hump here. And there's definitely moments where you're going to find some little bumps in difficulty where it's going to be a harder, confluence of modifiers and squads you're facing. And so I think there's also ways to get around that as well. So I don't think hopefully players won't feel they've just gotten screwed and they're stuck and there's nothing they can do about it. I know Prototype's been working hard to try and alleviate all those kind of scenarios we found during testing of like hitting a wall that maybe people weren't expecting with a really hard squad, where it should be fairly balanced around like how, like if you're a normal now, you should be able, and you're at a couple million GP, you're probably going to be able to get through this one way or the other. I think it's going to take some theory crafting. It's going to take some thinking about how you use those data discs. The data discs are really, really powerful. I think also the consumables can be incredibly strong too. And knowing when to use those and when to save them and when to use them is probably going to be a big part of the strategy. I know everyone's run is going to be unique and people are going to have to figure this out on their own, but I think there's probably a lot of room for people to still theory craft as on a whole, on a overview level of the whole event of like, what are the hardest matchups? When should I save to use this special consumable? Which ones are the most valuable to which teams and all that kind of stuff, right? There's going to be a lot of thinking on this. We know our players are very smart. They love this game and they are incredibly involved in how every nuance of the mechanics work. And well, this is the test. Good luck.
Well, and the only thing I'd call out as, let's just caution this from the beginning, is there is a progressive difficulty curve to each sector, right? So, and there's tremendous variability between players who are at level 85 of the breadth and depth of their collection. If you're a brand new 85 versus somebody who's been playing for the last 5 years, there could be a tremendous difference in strength. And so it's very likely, players at all different stages along the way are going to be able to progress to different points inside of the event. But yeah, like some of the consumables and data disks and playing around with different builds is intended, as you slow down and eventually stall out, like, we wanted to create lots of moments of like, can I get another, can I complete one more feat? Can I go back and 3-star something to get just a little bit further, maybe earn your way into the next crate, earn some more currency that might allow you to go in and purchase another consumable that's a game changer and allows you to make a little bit more progress, but you're not intended to not everyone is intended to just be able to complete the entire event every single time. You're going to, as you invest into your collection of characters, you're going to get more powerful. You're going to be able to make more progress and earn more rewards from this event over time.
Well, I got kind of a dorky question about the data disks and the consumables. Like, are they going to be applied, I guess, additive, or is one going to apply before the other? Like, if I use the offense percentage consumable, is that going to apply to my base stats before the data disk, or vice versa? Or are they just kind of added together?
Prototype?
I can speak to the data disks. The consumable implementation is something that was handled by another designer. So I don't quite know how that one is hooked up all the way down to that level. But the data disks are applying stats and mechanics at the same time that abilities do. So it is not, these aren't occurring before mods or anything like that. So that was a big part of the balance evaluation when it comes to data disks, because there was a consideration of, hey, do we make this apply before mods? Do we make this apply after mods? Like, where in that formula does this live? And the more I began to look at data disks and making those balance or those evaluations myself, when you get to choose one of the three, like how valuable is each one with my roster? If I didn't leverage all of the learnings that players have from looking at their abilities in battle, looking at the enemy's abilities in battle, like that's the litmus test of the hundreds of hours that people have played of how they evaluate one skill versus another, the value of one zeta on a character. So you should be able to judge the effects on data disks as if they were character abilities and continue to use that same knowledge to make those balance evaluations.
Okay, so you can kind of call data disks, I mean, would it be fair to call them like an additional unique?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Okay. Yeah, I could ask you guys a million questions about these data disks. This is the part I'm most excited about is all the theory crafting. I'm just kind of curious because each of the data disks, right? Every time you hit the node, there are almost like different levels of rarity with them, and each of them cost amount. Like you have an X amount of data disk slots, if you will, and certain data disks count for 2, certain disks count for 1. But could you guys kind of go over the thought process of how you guys determined which ones are stronger than the others? Just so on and so forth. Maybe what we can expect to see on these data disk nodes when we get to them.
Sure. So there's actually there's a lot of considerations when trying to decide which one is has a 2 data cost or 1 data cost. Part of that is looking at it from the perspective of efficiency of power per node visited, right? Because obviously a 3 data cost data disk is going to be have a higher contribution to your total power than a 1 cost, and it costs you 1 visit to a node to acquire it. So that's the opportunity cost there. However, the 1 cost ones are obviously a lot more flexible. And often the 1 cost ones have might have a higher impact mechanic, or a mechanic that isn't quite as niche, because it is a higher opportunity cost. And so that flexibility is factored in there. The value of the mechanic is factored into that evaluation of what is the cost of that data disk, as well as how accessible do I want this particular mechanic to be. For example, if it's turn meter, I probably don't want to make a ton of 3 cost data disks that are turn meter related, because the opportunity for a player to hyper focus on turn meter and potentially find infinite loops that could then trivialize the mode and become a dominant strategy that overrides the fun is a much, much higher likelihood. So you might find some mechanics that are a little bit more volatile are a lower cost, so that if you're trying to make a build entirely around them, the opportunity cost is higher and it requires more node visits. So that was a big reason why there's a limit to the system of the data capacity as well as the costing system. Unlike some other comparisons you could make, like in AFK Arena's Labyrinth, you just collect those artifacts, and whatever you collect along the way is added to a shelf of all the bonuses that you get. But I actually found that by adding these more restrictions, it increased the theory crafting space, it increased the design space, and it often allowed you to have conversations around with other players of, somebody might disagree with me on their estimate of the power level of one data disk versus another. And the cost is a big part of your evaluation too, because the most powerful ones are for cost, which if you collected three of them, if you were to collect three of them, you could equip all three of the four costs. But is that actually more powerful than equipping one of the highest rarities and a bunch of supporting data disks along with them? I'm not sure. It depends on your roster and depends what you pick. So that's a little bit of insight into why the costing system is there and why the data capacity is there. I think that it just creates the most opportunity for skill expression and theory crafting.
I'm pretty pumped about these data discs. It's like a game within a game. It's a lot of fun to kind of stack all the boost stuff. That when you get buffs for your characters, you can just apply tons of benefits to your characters when they get buffs. That strategy was really fun. That was it. Your Ewoks. There's some of these characters maybe you haven't used in a while really gain a lot of benefit from certain data discs. It's cool to brush the dust off those characters, throw them in there, save your stamina on other characters. So it's I'm really looking forward to this aspect of it. So
just before this, we're doing a battle with Ewoks and just how many buffs they could get on each other with the massively overpowered data disc, and like that one is very specifically about applying as many buffs as you can to your squad, and like so it kind of opens up the different squads that actually make sense to use in these scenarios. It's not necessarily about can this squad deal enough damage to beat a relic 1 or relic 2 team in that scenario, but like can I take enough turns and apply enough debuffs to myself to then apply that massive damage to the enemy squad consistently. And there's some at least I hope that it brings out a lot of different squads that we haven't seen in a long time, because there's definitely some weird strategies that I've been going through of trying to figure out, like, wait, okay, I guess this squad could do this well, but normally they wouldn't be as effective like in arena or something.
Yeah, that's what I found going through. I went through today again, and it was just like it was this kind of nostalgic pass through. You're having to beat all of these teams that that were really popular back in the beginning of TW, but now they're relicked. Like you don't underestimate walking into like a fully relicked Phoenix team that has AI mods on it. It's really easy to get overwhelmed and surprised by some of these teams, and I found myself thinking like, oh gosh, what beats this lead? What beats what was I running up against? What are the different things that beat Padme that I want to use now, and so that I have kind of some of my stronger squads in my pocket later on. So it was fun to kind of think back before Padme, before Emperor Palpatine was all geared up, just to figure out what beats some of these teams. I just have a couple small questions just to finish up the normal versus difficulty. So can you go through normal every time and get those rewards, or are you kind of after you finish, you can go back and do normal again. So are you only allowed to pass through one time, like when Conquest is launched? Like you can only do normal, you can only do difficult?
Okay. So right, when a new Conquest event kicks off, you commit to normal or hard. Right? There is a theoretical, there's a point where you have maximized literally everything that you can do in this event for this run of the event. You can go back, you can replay combat missions and try to 3-star them, earn all of the feats that you're able to. But there's not a like start normal over again and rerun the entire table during the course of that event. You'll have to wait until the next event cuts off. Similarly, you'll complete normal. You can't then kick off hard and complete that during the same duration. So
That
you'll
was
have
my
to wait
question.
until-
Yeah. Yeah. So no double dipping rewards then.
no double dipping rewards.
Okay. All right. And speaking of rewards, how do rewards compare between normal and difficult? Like what's kind of the breaking point between the two? If I know I can complete normal and I know I could probably get through maybe the first, 15-20% of hard, what's the kind of risk there in not getting the same rewards as completing all of normal?
It's a good question that I don't have the answer for right now. Just as I don't know if we want to include this in the actual recording or whatever, but as that solidifies, maybe that's an answer that we can get you next week or something like that. But
Sure.
I don't really have a great perspective on that. Prototype or Crumb. Yeah, I don't. Obviously, you're going to get more and better rewards out of hard, but where is that break point of, I was able to do everything in normal, and now I'm only able to make maybe like 10 or 15% of progress in hard. I don't know where that line is right now.
Yeah, the thing I can say, yeah, I don't think we've got that solidified exactly like where that line is. I mean, I think the main thing is that the gear should be sort of tuned towards where you are in your life cycle in the game, right? So if you're a 1 to 2 million GP player, there's lots and lots of gear at G8 to G12 that you care about. But when you're at 4-5 million GP, those things are still important, but you've got a lot bigger focus on some of that high-end gear instead. And so I know that it is tuned with the kinds of gear you'll get from those buckets more than anything else. And so I think as your needs as a player grow in different directions, you'll probably go, man, sometimes I want to do normal because this is where I am in the game right now, and I want more of those stun guns or whatever at this given time. Of course, everyone wants stun guns, but that's a different problem. But eventually, you'll want to say, no, I want more of the G13 kind of stuff. I want to get more into the relic materials and whatnot. And then that's when hard really becomes valuable to you and trying to progress through that. That cutoff, though, I think is going to be the real hard question that we need to answer for players in upcoming posts and whatnot, of like, when is it worthwhile for me to make the transition?
You're able to go in before you commit to a difficulty and see the entire reward ladder. And so part of that calculus of, how much progress do I think I'm going to be able to reasonably make through, n number of sectors, you'll be able to compare that against the reward ladder and try to make a judgment there of, okay, if I get to this crate, where does that put in hard? Where does that put me versus being able to get to the terminal crate?
Muted myself there. There's also some randomization with those crates. So, it also depends on where you are on your roster and what you care about. So you said as Eric was saying, you may want to look at each of those and go like, which of these provides the materials I'm looking for right now? Generally, obviously, if you can beat hard, it's much more worth it to do that. But, I think you can make that call from event to event to go, does it make sense? Do these first 3 or 4 reward crates in hard really give me the gear I care about, or is it all the normal crates really give me stuff that I want, and so I should probably do that. And I think like this first event, no one's gonna have to worry about that because we'll all be doing normal. It's really like it's really round 2 that we got to worry about, like when do we transition? And I think for the majority of people, it's going to be a pretty simple thing. Is that you're gonna breeze through normal and you're gonna feel like, okay, yeah, I'm super ready, or you're not. But there's definitely going to be a contingent of people who are right in that slice in the middle there, going like, maybe I could do it. And we just have to figure out how do we communicate that. It's something we'll figure out for sure.
I can provide something from the design perspective that's a lot more broad. It's not very specific, but the intent of the design for both of the reward ladders, for Galactic Challenge and for Conquest, the fact that you can't earn every one of them is actually a very important design decision, because in a lot of other modes of in the game, it is just that easier difficulties you can accumulate all of them, and that begs the difficult question of, how do I make each milestone along the way super rewarding and super full of the items that the players who can only reach that level of difficulty need, without inflating the economy for the people who can reach the higher levels of difficulty. And so being only able to earn the highest crate on the reward ladder is very intentional, because it allows us to make each one of those crates have a lot more rewards that are targeted for the types of pinches and the types of resources that a player who can only reach any single one of those milestones would need. And so that's kind of the difference between difficulty and hard, that I will say is hard isn't just normal plus. It's not just everything in normal of a higher quantity. These are rewards that are targeted to the types of needs for each of those levels of investments for those accounts, the type of resources that account would need.
Mm-hmm. So stun guns everywhere, though, right, guys?
Maybe you get lucky and all the boxes will have stun guns in them, but
yes.
the rewards are randomized a bit. So good luck.
My last question is just tell us about the Razor Crest. This is a game mode that has a character reward that has a unit reward in it, and that's very exciting. Tell us about the Razor Crest. As much as you can about the ship, and how long is it going to take for us to get it walking through this game mode, do you think?
Yeah, I think so the Razor Crest is a really cool ship. I think people have been asking for this for quite some time. Mandalorian is obviously one of my favorite things in the Star Wars universe, but like a lot of players who've been just waiting for more ships in general. And I think this is it's a really cool ship that fits into the bounty hunter squad. It has some synergies with Breach, which I think is sort of their main kind of theme. But it also does a couple other really cool things around like bounty hunters in general, right? Where it's got one of its unique kind of gives its own kind of payout and contract. Whereas if you're inflicting breach enough times, the entire set of your bounty hunters are ships are going to get a bonus throughout the rest of the battle. So kind of emulating what you'd see in the sort of character battles, but as ships, which I think is super cool. With in the show, it takes quite a beating, and we wanted to like try and represent it, in some way in the game. And so it's got a special buff called Reinforced Hull that gives it a whole bunch of defense. And then as it takes damage, it loses those stacks of Reinforced Hull over time. And then once it goes down, it comes back again with a couple stacks of Reinforced Hulls. So it is a ship that keeps on taking a beating as it did in the show. And so many of our characters and our ships are trying to figure out how do we capture the sort of spirit of that thing in some way. And for characters, it's a little bit easier because they're human with or some sort of creature that has a personality. With a ship, it's often not as like obvious. But I think the Razor Crest was at least easier in that sense because it has such a defined kind of personality as this ship that's been taking a beating throughout the show, and is kind of beloved as much as almost anyone else. I mean, I won't say it's as beloved as much as Grogu, but it's up there. Sorry, and to your second question as well. So again, rewards are still being decided right now, and so I can't say how many shards you will get throughout, or how many blueprints you'll get throughout this event for the Razor Crest. You will get them though, likely from the crates, but also from nodes as well. You'll just spend that Conquest currency to buy that if that's the choice you want to make. Obviously that Conquest currency is valuable, but there is a cap on it, so you got to spend it at some point. So you may want to spend it on those consumables and whatnot, and making sure you have things that kind of get you over those difficulty humps. Or if your things are going well, you may be able to just spend it on those Razor Crest blueprints as you need them. It will unlock at 2-star, so it's not going to be something that's going to take a ton of blueprints to get started. So you'll probably be able to unlock it within the first couple events, I would imagine.
There seems to be a cap on the currency for Conquest mode. Could you guys kind of explain why that is? What we need to spend it on? Is there a sense of urgency? What items transfer over? What we can keep, what we can't, sort of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Conquest currency does have a cap, and we want you to spend it. We want you to, and part of creating like rich choice in this mode is making those decisions between, do I want to spend this currency right now? Do I want to save it up for later? But we don't want just like mass hoarding. It kind of breaks how the mode works. So There's a cap. There are different pieces like the data disks, the consumables will reset between events. But the store will stay open. The Conquest store will stay open. That said, you can't buy event-specific items. You can't buy consumables between events. There has to be an event running for you to be able to buy one of those. But things like the Razor Crest or gear or any other sort of items that are in there that are not event-specific can be purchased in between events.
All right, cool. Yeah.
Thank you, Eric.
Cool. Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Yeah, we've loosely mentioned the term stamina throughout this interview quite a few times. I was just curious if you guys could just quickly kind of explain. I go into a battle. My character uses this much stamina. How does that affect? Like, how does stamina directly affect your characters, and how can we refresh the stamina on our characters? Yeah.
Prototype, you want to go after this one?
Sure. So stamina is a stamina penalty is incurred upon battle victory. So it doesn't. There's no penalty for just going in and kind of experimenting and seeing, which teams might be appropriate to beat the team that you're facing. Stamina regenerates like energy does, where you get X% of stamina over Y amount of time, or stamina consumables can be picked up from merchant nodes or purchased from shipments. Stamina does have an effect on your stats. A unit that is at 0% stamina, not only can they not enter battle at 0%, but they will have 30% of their max stats. And that's just to kind of prevent you from having one team that can solve this entire mode, so that we're really, again, rewarding a wider roster investment and encouraging players to continue to dig up teams maybe that they haven't played with in quite a while, as well as the really interesting decisions that you have to make when you're in some of these other modes that require a wide roster investment. You're making this decision of, okay, my opponent has placed a clone team or a General Anakin team on the opposite side. What is the lowest amount of power that I can use to conquer that? And because stamina affects your stats, you're actually probably going to have to ask that question a lot more of, what is my Galactic Legend team at 40% stamina capable of beating? The answer to that is going to be a lot different than if stamina didn't affect stats. So there's that evaluation that's constantly changing of what is my team capable of, and it changes with stamina values. So stamina kind of hits multiple opportunities for skill expression with the player.
There's also energy, and so we didn't want to punish experimentation. So I don't know if we mentioned it, but stamina is only charged upon victory. Energy is charged at the start of battle. Stamina is only charged upon victory.
All right, that's cool. Let's add a whole other element to it. I'm really excited about this game mode. For T Money and I'd like to thank you guys very much for doing this interview with us. Take the time out of your day to answer some of our pesky questions, and I hope you guys enjoy your weekend.
Thank you very much for having us. We're excited to get this out into players' hands too. If we didn't already cover it, the update that includes Conquest goes out at the end of the month, and the first event is slated for March 1st right now. And yeah, super excited to get this into players' hands, get some feedback, and continue to tune and make improvements over time. Thanks for having us.
Thank you, guys.